This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the freshest, the latest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Jerome Chirco, and alongside me, as usual, is my sidekick and partner in crime for episode number 87, specifically, of this week's pod, and that is John Charles Macaroon. John, how's it going?
Vito, the Detroit Tigers have played 4 series, okay, and they've won all 4. You know, I know you tied with the White Sox going 1-1, but in essence, you've played 4 different teams. You've lost to each team once, collectively. And now we're sitting here at the time of this recording, 8 wins, 4 losses. It's been a good start to the year. And knowing that there's been so much pressure on the Detroit Tigers, I've been really enjoying peeking into what they've been doing. I mean, game in, game out, there's a little bit of variety. There's some stories to tell in terms of the bullpen, but in essence, we have a lot of positive things to talk about with these Detroit Tigers. An 8-4 start, I really do think that we have hammered them enough, but on the same spectrum, they've played pretty well. They've won series. I mean, you've only lost to no team that they played so far has beaten them more than once.
It's been very impressive, and seeing what they did this past weekend, too, against the Indians was really, really impressive, taking 2 out of 3, and their 2 youngsters won a game to win 2 out of 3 for the Tigers this past weekend in Cleveland at Progressive Field. But despite what those youngsters did, we still have to reflect upon the fact that JV failed to get it done.
Well, hold on,
horrible.
Vito. I know, Vito. I know you like to jump in with all the negativity, but tell me what's impressed you to start the year. Tell me what has made you go, wow. They're 8-4, and I believe they're atop of the division. All right, so to start the year, 12 games in, they're in first place. But damn, you want to jump in and just rip JV? I know that, you know, his stuff is hittable. And I know that he lost in the superstar matchup versus Kluber, but hell, Kluber didn't perform all that well either. But hey, if you're going to play a series, it's hard to win 3 games against a top opponent. It's hard to sweep Boston. You won 3 or 4 against Boston. You won 2 or 3 against Cleveland. Give them a break, don't you think? Hey, if they're going to go in every series 2 out of 3, you're going to have a very successful season. So tell me, what's impressed you about this team?
The 2 young lefties getting it done this past weekend. They've been good so far. Outside of that poor start for Matt Boyd against the White Sox in Chicago to start off the season. Besides that, Boyd's been really good, and Norris has looked great. He's got some great stuff, the lefty that is Daniel Norris, and I think he can be potentially the second best starting pitcher in this Tigers rotation all season long, and if not this season, moving into the future, into 2018 and beyond. So love his stuff, and Boyd is a very capable number 4, number 5 starting pitcher. He has proven that now this season. He did last year for the majority of last year, and he's really coming into his own, I think, more and more. And right now he's more capable, and I would rely upon him more right now, Matt Boyd, than Jordan Zimmerman. Zimmerman, I'm still a little bit concerned about. I don't know what he's capable of going forward, and he has that injury past now after missing the time that he did last year and not being able to recover last year in the second half when he came back from the injury, being horrible in the second half of last season. After his peerless start, remember, to the first half of last year in a Tigers uni for the first time, too, last year was Jordan Zimmerman. But he is a big concern, and he is a big key. Him turning it around is key to the Tigers having long-term success this season and making the playoffs, in my opinion. Outside of the bullpen, hopefully, steadily improving, because it needs to steadily improve, and they need to find guys outside of the Wilson duo that can get it done consistently in the late inning of games, or at least in high-leverage situations. Because time and time again so far this season, Doc, the positives have been Alex Wilson and Justin Wilson coming into ball games and putting out fires rather quickly. They can get it done in high-leverage situations. How about the rest of that pen, though? You're not going to use Anibal Sanchez right now in any high-leverage situation. You're not going to use Shane Green and even Kyle Ryan right now in any high-leverage situation. Rondon's already been demoted to AAA. He's out of the picture right now. He was your setup man to start the season. And K-Rod right now, truly, Doc, not to reflect on some negatives regarding the Tigers, as I'm doing right now, and have gotten into a little bit too much for your liking, maybe, to start off this week's podcast. But K-Rod, you cannot trust upon either right now, Doc, to get it done in high-leverage situations. He is no longer a dominant /lights-out closer, and really, you can leave him in that role, but there doesn't need to be a designated closer each game. Because if you're putting K-Rod out there in tight ball games, high leverage situations every single time for your team in the ninth inning, you're going to lose some games too, some pivotal games and series that they could win if they didn't use him as frequently in that ninth inning role, which I think Brad Ausmus will continually do as the season progresses. And if and when he does continue to do so, it will be on him for the blame that the ball club should get, because he will be the reason why, well, the Tigers are going out there and losing some games that they could be winning, and some series as well that they could be winning.
See, Vito, what tends to happen is people form their narrative, and sometimes they just start looking for things to pick on. Yes, K-Rod struggles. Yes, he features a 90-mile-an-hour fastball, but in the same token, he has gone out there and rebounded. And hey, if you got a 5-run lead and you give up 4 runs, hey, you still win the ball game. And if you're expecting K-Rod to go out there each and every performance and just go 3 up, 3 down, you have to also prepare for the roller coaster. But if in more situations than not, K-Rod gets the job done, then I'll take it. And part of it is I'm getting used to the roller coaster type atmosphere in the bullpen. It's become one of those things where if you're a little bit nervous, if you're faint of heart, watching the Tigers bullpen is going to make you crazy. But for me, I'm starting to embrace it. Yeah, I get pissed off once in a while when K-Rod, gives up a grand slam. But hey, they were up 7-2. You didn't give up that final hit to lose the game. And hey, last year, you got to remember, he was like this all last year, the king of the curveball, and he only blew 4 to 5 saves the entire 2016 season. And so you look at it as, yes, could there be a much better bullpen arm? Could they find a better closer than K-Rod? Of course. But Brad Ausmus, and something maybe in the second half we'll tease, might be getting a pass because what he has, he's utilizing in the best possible light, and he might be setting himself up for an excuse because he's 8-4 with this roster, and this bullpen blows, and everybody knows it, and you're still sitting atop of the division. And I think where we need to really focus our attention and focus your anger is on Avila. Brad Ausmus is just using the pieces that he has. They ain't that good, but they ain't that bad either. I know many people are curious, and many people are wondering, well, you can't use Alex Wilson, Justin Wilson, K-Rod each and every game. Those 3 guys have performed pretty well, and I want to give them their just due. I mean, hell, look at Alex Wilson. Took a ball to the face. Didn't even worry about that. Didn't go down. He got the out first, then worried about himself. K-Rod give up a grand slam in his previous appearance. Comes in versus the Indians, does the job in the 3rd game. So you got to look at it as, I know you have venom. I know we have the narrative. I do too, that this might be a team that's going to lose out on the playoffs because of that bullpen. But we're not there yet. We're sitting right now with 8 wins out of 12 games, and we'll take it. And there's a big 3-game series with Tampa Bay on the road. But coming after a day off, I'm sitting here today saying that you got to look at this Tiger team and maybe start looking at some of the positives because, hey, 12 games, 12 straight games where a Tiger has homered. And it's one of those things where if collectively this team can overcome some injuries, should they pop up, if they can overcome this craptastic bullpen, then I'm thinking that you need to kind of also look at some of the positives of this team and maybe invest a little bit. Yes, we know the things we're going to be critical about, but the things that you talked about, hey, Justin Wilson, Alex Wilson, and K-Rod are 3 guys that are rounding into form.
K-Rod's not, though. You can't rely upon him. And I wanted to second something, too, with you, about that, piggybacking off of that. Big Vito's over-under. He blew 5 saves last year. You brought up 4 or 5 saves that he blew last year. He was pretty consistently good in the 9th inning, getting the job done as a closer. Thing is, this season, can you count upon K-Rod to not blow more than 5 saves? So, in so many words, my question for you is, as part of Big Vito's over-under on this week's podcast, over or under 5 blown saves out of K-Rod this season?
The number that comes to my mind is between 5 and 7. So I would say either a push or slightly over. I think that he's going to do a good enough job. Yes, he's going to put runners on. Yes, he's going to make everybody crazy. But more times than not, he is crafty. He gets guys to make contact. And I think where Tigers fans are looking is, we want a guy just to go out there and throw 99 miles an hour and get guys out and consistently control the baseball, consistently throw strikes. What's happened is they've had those guys that throw 90 miles an hour, but they can't consistently get it over the plate. Rondon, in essence, is a guy that throws super hard, but he couldn't throw strikes. I'll take a guy like K-Rod at this point in time who pitches to contact but gets guys out. I'll take that at this point in the season. I'll take where he's at, and I know that you don't have confidence in him, but I'm saying that I think it's based upon your opinion and not on fact, because if you look at fact, yeah, he's going to give up runs. Yeah, he's going to have situations where he blows opportunities. But hey, if he's gonna, take some wins and away from some of the pitchers, hey, it happens. Is he gonna walk into some saves when he comes into a game with like a 4 or 5 run lead? Hey, I'll take it. It's one of those things where I have more confidence in K-Rod than you do. And I think maybe you should look at changing your opinion on K-Rod because he's done a decent job. Is he a 99-mile-an-hour flamethrower? No. But if you're trying to pigeonhole him into that, you're always going to be disappointed. I would say that you need to kind of back off of K-Rod. He'll do his job.
But on Friday night, with Daniel Norris, a great start by him. They almost blew that game. He gave up a grand slam. You brought it up. Now, it was 7-2 at the time, so they still held on and won 7-6 in that game Friday night against the Indians.
Backed into a save.
Backed into a save. So what if it was a tighter ball game, only a 2 or 3 run lead? Guess what?
But it wasn't.
But it could be in the future, especially against the Indians and against any Major League Baseball club. I don't trust him right now. He's given up more hits than innings pitched. And also his FIP, that is his fielding independent pitching, which is a better evaluation measure of a starting or relief pitcher's quality of play than his ERA. And looking at that stat, the FIP, you see right now that K-Rod's fielding independent pitching is above 5. It's at 5.24. And that's how you truly evaluate relief arms, any arm nowadays in big league baseball. So if you look at that stat, the fielding independent pitching, once again, it is way too high to say that you have a lot of trust or can have a lot of trust in K-Rod closing out ball games in 2017. Sorry, Doc. Had to go there. Had to say it.
Okay, now, you started the podcast ripping JV. Do you take any credence at all that potentially, because when you look at his stuff, it was there. Do you take any onus or stock into the notion that maybe the Indians got a hold of some inside information and were tipping his pitches? Because if you look at that performance, if you go back and watch it, his stuff was pretty good, but the Indians seemed to tattoo it and might have known what was going on. So do you think of that, or what was your reaction when the Indians were potentially tipping off what JV was throwing?
I'll just say this. He gave up a single-season career-high 30 home runs last year. 7 of those home runs were permitted against the Indians. Okay? So almost 1/3 of the home runs that he allowed all of 2016 were allowed against the Tribe. And then when you look at his earned run average at Progressive Field, it is right now well above 5. It's at 5.72 in his career pitching at Progressive Field, the home ballpark of the Indians. That tells me, regardless of the fact if he was tipping his pitches or not on Saturday, it still tells me that he has struggled continuously throughout his career since he made his debut in 2005. He has struggled to get it done against the Indians, which is a problem at this point when you look at the Indians as the class of the AL Central. They are the team we are chasing that won the Central last year, that made the World Series last year out of the American League. And now your ace starting pitcher can't get it done consistently against that ball club that you're chasing. Well, guess what? You have no shot pretty much then at dethroning the Indians. If he doesn't turn around his productivity and get it done more often than not going forward against the Indians this season, you're not going to see the Tigers having any shot at all to dethrone the Indians atop the AL Central. So for me, it's about more than tipping his pitches. Maybe he was on Saturday. I'll give him that. A little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But in his career as a whole, he's never gotten it done against the Indians, and especially on the road at Progressive Field.
Okay, I see what you're saying in that he still has to do the job, and he did give up quite a bit of runs. I think 9 runs, 11 hits that he gave up versus the Indians. But hey, it's one of those situations where if the Cleveland Indians were able to, steal some signs and things like that, they have to be able to recognize that and switch it up, maybe go to a different set of signs. The Tigers maybe have to be more aware of that, not after the game, but during the game to protect Justin Verlander. But, the Tigers won the series. They took 2 out of 3 versus the Cleveland Indians. Now, when you look at last year, the Tigers went 4-14 versus the Indians. And basically, if you go 500 versus the Tribe, then you have an opportunity to maybe get into the postseason as a wild card. But what do you take away from the series versus Cleveland? Do we say we get excited because they won 2 out of 3? Do we go, well, Cleveland looked a little bit off, they didn't look to be firing on all cylinders? Or do you say, you know what? This Tiger team, it may not be a collection of superstars. It may not be a collection of a talented bullpen and relief pitchers, but collectively, as a unit, maybe this is a team that could maybe get on a run if they play together and they utilize some of their strengths and maybe limit some of the damage of some of their weaknesses. But for me, what do I take away from it? Hey, you played 3 games on the road versus Cleveland. You went there, you won 2 of them. It sends a message that, hey, 2016 was a fluke. This is no longer 2016. This is 2017. And the Tigers are ready to take the next step, turn the page from whatever caused all those losses, and they went into their house, the Tribe's house, and won a series. And I'm not going to sit here and overblow it, but 2 out of 3 versus Cleveland is not bad at all.
But it's still early in the season. I mean, look at the Indians' record right now. 5-7, under 500. So they're not clicking on all cylinders. Edwin Encarnacion, their big offseason acquisition from the Jays, who hits home runs at a premium rate, has not produced at a premium rate yet this season for the Tribe. He will pick it up. He is bound to pick it up. Jason Kipnis started the season on the disabled list. He is not back yet for the Tribe. When he gets back, when Edwin Encarnacion turns it around, that team will be better. We know it will be clicking much more on all cylinders. And, okay, they have Jose Ramirez hitting right now, who's subbing in for Kipnis at second base. They have Lindor, who's hitting a great shortstop for them. And, they've got some other capable major league hitters. And they have Michael Brantley back in the fold now after playing all of 11 games last season for the Tribe. So having him back and hitting pretty well so far for the Tribe, those are big positives for the Tribe. But I still see them doing a little bit better, a little bit more as the season progresses, and they're not going to be anything close to an under 500 ball club. So right now, them being 500, under 500 that is, well, that tells me they haven't played their best baseball yet. And really, the best indication of a team and whether or not they're a true contender in a particular season is their record with 40 games played in a season. So at the 40-game mark, we will see whether or not the Indians truly are that great of a ball club as they were last year and a true contender for the AL pennant. So right now, for me, I can't take too much out of this past weekend and winning 2 out of 3 for the Tigers. But at the same time, Doc, you can say this. For those youngsters that got it done and got it done big time this past weekend, that is specifically Daniel Norris on Friday night and Matt Boyd on Sunday, for those guys, it's a huge confidence and momentum booster. It really is, because I think the Indians got in the Tigers' heads last year, and that's why they went 4-14. Tigers won't do that poorly against the Indians this year. We already know that, even though the Indians might be better and might show that more as the season goes along. But still, for the Tigers not to get beat up that bad this weekend, I think it is a big confidence and momentum booster, especially for the younger ball players on the Tigers roster. And for Verlander, there is the past track record of him not getting it done productively against the Tribe in the past throughout his whole entire big league career. But you still don't want to slam him too much for his poor outing because it is so early in the season. And because, he's a bad mamma jamma. He is a big-time cocky MFer. Justin Verlander is. So, for him, he gets right past that poor start. He's not going to let that eat him up and get the best of him mentally. He will be able to rebound and do something of quality, at least pretty much against the Tribe going forward. Or, just in so many words to sum it up, for Verlander, his sake, it's not going to eat at him in his next outing. It is not. Because Verlander is that confident and cocky MFer at this point in his big league career. And a guy that I still truly believe will be an AL Cy Young contender for a second straight year by the end of this campaign, Doc.
Okay, so you're being a little bit pragmatic, not getting too high, not getting too low. But I really look at it and I say, hey, if you're going to play Cleveland, that's a division rival, and you have to go out there and handle your business. And last year, the Tigers were not able to do that versus Cleveland. This year, they came out with a new mindset. And hey, even if, the Indians aren't that good, you still got to go out there and beat them because they have talent all across the board there. And it's nice to go into their home and do some damage. So I look at it and I say, good, go out there and win 2 out of 3 versus everybody. I think that's a great recipe for success. It allows Brad Ausmus to kind of take the heat off a little bit because he hasn't made too many decisions where we've been hypercritical. Maybe just a couple to start the year, but in essence, the team is playing a pretty good brand of baseball. And following this quick timeout, I want to get your sense of maybe how they're going to play versus the Tampa Bay Rays. Do the nicks and aches to potentially Alex Wilson, Miggy cause you any concern? The news is good. Miggy's going to play, in the first game of the series versus Tampa Bay, and we'll see how he performs because anytime you look at Miggy and you go, ooh, he twinged his back, you go, uh-oh, we have a little bit of a pause for concern. But, hey, 3 games versus Tampa Bay on the road, I think there's an opportunity for some success.
And Doc, we'll talk about that and much more after this quick commercial break on episode number 87 of Tigers Talk.
Vito, I want to tell you about our great hosting site, Podomatic. Since we started this project, we've only used one place to host all the podcasts on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and that's Podomatic. If you're looking to start a new podcast and you want to upload your shows quickly, easily, get great stats, you got to check out Podomatic.com. It's the only hosting site we've ever used, and the only reason why we use it is, look, you've posted shows, I've posted shows. It's a very easy interface. It's easy to use, very user-friendly, and I can't thank Podomatic enough for what they've done for our network. So if you're looking to podcast, I would recommend Podomatic.com.
And back here on episode number 87 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company, and we thank all the various outlets and platforms for our very podcast and different episodes of the podcast, including Doc and Jock. In this one, Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. And Doc, Podomatic has been great. And speaking of greatness and something being great, how about a somebody in Alex Avila being great so far out of nowhere, surprisingly being a very competent backup for the Tigers as a left-handed option for the Tigers at catcher, and he's gotten it done with the home run ball as well.
Now, something I noticed on Twitter is that when he had success, I kind of saw some people tweeting out that, hey, back off all you Avila haters. I looked at it and I said, was there some hate for Alex Avila for the signing? I look at it and I go, yeah, he is making almost 2.5 times as much as James McCann when you look at the salary. And I go, well, was there nepotism? Maybe. I mean, Alex Avila's dad is the general manager of the Detroit Tigers, but there are also a slew of reasons why he's back. Look how he handles the pitching staff. My goodness, I mean, he is able to call a great game. And look what he was able to do for Daniel Norris in that game that we talked about. He forced Daniel Norris to throw a bunch of changeups, a bunch of curveballs to settle him down. Because what happens with young flamethrowers is they want to throw that fastball all over the place. And you can't do that because professional hitters can hit even 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. But what's challenging is when they don't know what's coming. And what Alex Avila did was he forced Daniel Norris to throw changeup, curveball after curveball to keep the Indians hitters off balance. And I really think he did a good job. Now, is he worth $2 million a year? No. Is he probably going to regress back to what his career numbers are? Yeah. But I was a little bit surprised by this whole pro Alex Avila versus the negative Alex Avila crowd. Am I missing something? I really wasn't tapped into that.
Well, I'm pro Alex Avila. Have you been negative, Alex Avila? I think you might have been a little bit in the offseason when the Tigers were considering signing him to replace Jared Saltalamacchia, who hit all those clutch bombs last year for the Tigers. But that's all he hit. This guy, by the way, Alex Avila, and numerous people have pointed it out on Twitter, produced a war of one in only 57 games played with the White Sox last year. That's pretty darn good for a backup. So for me, he's a very competent backup, and the reason why his WAR was that high and could be as high as that, if not more this year, if he plays in more games behind the plate this year for the Tigers, Doc, it is because of a great stat known as on-base percentage. An analytical mind, sabermetric minds really love that stat. And guess what? Avila gets on base and produces a few bombs a year. And as a backup, that's all you can ask out of that kind of player. And really, at this point in Avila's career, he is now at the age of 30. Well, that's all you can expect, is that he produces a good 60 to 65 games, maybe 70 games for the Tigers as their backstop. If he gets on base often enough, you got to say that this is one of the shrewdest and smartest moves made by his father, the GM, Al Avila. And, Doc, I want to say this, make this statement. Avila, how he's produced, if he keeps producing, it will be indicative of nepotism at its finest. Think about it that way. Nepotism at its finest right now that we've seen via his acquisition of his son, Alex Avila, to be the backup catcher because he has produced so far so good. So for me, I am pro Alex Avila, a member of that crowd. And for those naysayers about his productivity and about his game as well overall as a backup catcher, I say forget about you and forget about all your naysaying. Come on. Start appreciating what Alex Avila can bring to the Tigers as a backup catcher.
Okay, the way I look at it is you could have gotten better than Alex Avila.
I don't know as a backup, though.
No.
And he is only 30. He's not that old, really, when you look at other big leaguers and big league backup catchers. I mean, think about it that way, what they could have gotten outside of him. Not many quality options out there on the open market this past offseason. And Saltalamacchia was not that great overall-wise. Avila is an upgrade, an extreme upgrade over Jared Saltalamacchia. And remember, there is the point to bring up with Avila that you brought up. When he's catching younger pitchers too, guess what? He can guide them in the right direction. He's a great game manager, and he can throw out a runner here and there. Not as good as James McCann, the starting everyday catcher for the Tigers, with his McCannon of an arm. But Avila is adequate at least at throwing out runners and at managing a pitching staff. He has proven that as well time and time again throughout his big league career. So in Avila's defense, once again, I say that contract that they gave to him, which wasn't a big-time contract, I think he was worth every single penny of it.
Ooh, worth every penny.
Every penny, baby.
Okay, so you're not one of those people that is kind of hating on Alex Avila. You think that he earned his spot and that when you look at all the other options out there that he's the best guy. But I look at it and I say, okay, don't you think, though, that his numbers will regress and that...
Oh, yeah, he's batting .700. Well, they're bound to regress. Nobody will hit that well.
No.
Not even Tony Gwynn did or all these great legendary ball players.
To the level of like a 240 hitter and he gets a lot of outs, and I don't see him having the power numbers the rest of the way. And that's why he is a backup. When you pay a backup $2 million, he's making more than your starting catcher. There aren't too many organizations that have backups that are making more than their starting catcher.
That's because of McCann's youth, though. He's still, relatively speaking, a youngster as a big leaguer. So he will progressively make more and more money throughout his big league career and will ultimately make more money than Avila if he continues to be a starting catcher in the bigs. Now, Avila, as a backup, getting that amount of money, that is really the going rate, by the way, Doc. For a backup catcher, a backup ball player, they're going to get probably about $2 million, maybe $1.5 million. So for me, he's not overpaid at all.
Okay, so he has value, and his experience that he can relay to James McCann and the younger pitchers is definitely invaluable as well. But I think that if you really look deeply, I would say that there is a potential that later on in the year we'll revisit this topic, and we'll see that I'm right again, per usual, that Alex Avila's numbers won't be where they need to be and that people will start to complain again. I think this is a fire right now that's being tapered, that's being held under control because of his recent performances. But I think that fire might spark up again throughout the course of the season. Now, any concern at all regarding Miguel Cabrera's back? I know that, from the World Baseball Classic, there was a little bit of concern regarding his groin. In the past few seasons, he has kind of come up a little bit gimpy in terms of his ankles and his legs and things like that. But any concern regarding Miguel Cabrera going forward? He's going to be in the lineup to start the series versus the Tampa Bay Rays.
Doc, I'm going to say a little bit of concern for Miguel Cabrera because his back has already been stiff, has tightened up before, and as an older ball player now, it could be a lingering concern all throughout the season. And remember, he really hasn't hit very well so far this year for extra base power. And really, Justin Upton hasn't either. Victor Martinez hasn't either. JD Martinez still on the shelf. You've got to be happy, too, with the fact that the Tigers are 8-4 as of this recording Tuesday, and Tuesday at 4:44 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You have to be elated that the Tigers are where they are at because those bats that I just noted haven't hit really well yet. And Miguel Cabrera, that could be a lingering concern. The back stiffness could be something that ends up striking him, nagging him as the season goes along. And that is my concern that it will do just that, Doc.
All right, Vito, you've waited 30 minutes. And I know you've been chomping at the bit to go negative and to dig in to the Detroit Tigers. So I appreciate you looking at some positives for 30 minutes here. But now, to turn our focus into what pissed off Tigers fans significantly in the last week. When you look at that bullpen, you go, wow, you called up Jimenez. Rondon was awful. He was horrid. He wasn't cutting the mustard. They called up Jimenez. And hey, you put him in there. You put him in to play. And what did you do? After he got 3 guys out, you sent him right back down. And you go, who did you bring up? Cuevas? And you stuck him in there in a performance and he stunk it up. And you go, seriously? How on earth could you send down Jimenez? Many people are talking about service time, looking at his numbers. Many people are pissed off, wondering why the hell the Detroit Tigers would even consider sending Jimenez down. And I'm not going to lie, I was quite surprised. And usually I don't critique significantly Tigers' moves. I really feel like they do know they have a pulse of who's going to perform and they have a chance to do well. But to send down Jimenez was real eye-opening and was one thing you can be right in critiquing the Detroit Tigers. They should not have sent down Jimenez.
Well, then they called up a long reliever in place of him. How about Willie Cuevas? Now, is that any relation to Pepino Cuevas, a former boxer? I don't even know who the heck this guy is.
I already gave him a nickname after his first performance. I called him Jose Cuervo Cuevas because you're going to need to drink a whole heck of a lot to watch.
Oh, my God.
Watch these guys, send him back down, and he went back down right away.
Yeah, you can't rely upon him.
One and done.
He's one and done. He's probably an Anibal Sanchez type that is a long reliever at best at this point, even though he's a lot younger than Anibal Sanchez. And really the thing that I want to gripe upon is Anibal Sanchez. It has to be the end of an era for Anibal in a Tigers uniform, right? Aren't we at that point? Finally, it seems like everybody's calling for his head. And every single time he goes into the ballgame, he's letting up, more than a solo shot. So it's not just solo shots, it's home run to the 2 or 3 run variety. So multiple runs being scored off of these home runs given up by Anibal Sanchez. And I think continually with Anibal, that will be the case where he's given up bombs. And even though he's coming in these long relief roles where the game's out of hand, not in question, still you can't have a long reliever be that darn bad, Doc. So for me, because I see that continuing to happen for him, giving up those big-time bombs, for me, that's why the end of the line has to be near for Anibal Sanchez. And we've been saying that harping on that for how long on this podcast, too?
What's more egregious, Anibal Sanchez being on the roster or Jimenez coming up for a single performance and going back down?
I would say at this point, Anibal Sanchez being on the roster because he's proven time and time again, so far this year and the last 2 years, before this particular season, he has proven time and time again, Doc, that he is no longer able to cut the mustard seed. Okay? He's not capable of being part of a major league starting rotation or major league bullpen. And what a nice guy. A lot of people love him, his clubhouse presence, what he did in 2013 being the American League ERA leader, but that is a long time ago at this point. That is pretty much what he did then is irrelevant at this point. Now it is time to officially move on from Anibal, and there has to be somebody that is better than him because really at this point, all we're looking for is a guy that can get an out or two. Anibal can't even really get an out or two at this point in his big league career, even in those spots where the game is far out of hand. So he has seen his best days. They are long behind him, and it's time once again, to reiterate my point, it is time to officially move on from the Sanchez, the artist formerly known as the Sanchez, and Anibal Sanchez, Doc.
Do you see Jimenez making an appearance back with the ball club relatively quickly, or does he need more time to go back down to Toledo and work his magic for the Tigers to have trust in him that he'll do the job?
I think right now the Tigers front office, the organization as a whole, views Jimenez as a one-pitch artist, so a one-trick pony, and that's the problem with Jimenez and why they don't want to rush him into any big-time roles on the big league club. But the thing is, when you have the likes of Cuevas and Anibal Sanchez being up and getting destroyed, well, how about Jimenez coming up and even taking the place of a guy? I mean, I've harped on the fact that I don't like Kyle Ryan. I don't like Shane Green. And as I said already now a few times, I don't like Anibal Sanchez. Jimenez, I believe, can be better than those guys already. So why not call him up and give him that shot? And I know you don't want to put him into high-leverage situations to start off his big league career. Thing is, he's still got to be better than Anibal Sanchez pitching in a contest that is far over.
And now, Tony Paul has noted in a recent article in the Detroit News, and many people are talking about what's going on with Victor Martinez, in that he's costing the guys in the lower half of the lineup RBI opportunities because he's not hitting right now. Are you concerned at all regarding Victor Martinez? And many people are wondering that, okay, once JD comes around, you might have to put him fourth and move Victor Martinez maybe down to 6 or down in the lineup based upon his poor hitting at this point in time, and that right now he's a hindrance to the ball club.
Well, yeah, he doesn't hit for power right now. No extra base power. Not getting on base consistently enough either. His value right now is literally 0. 0 and nada for our Espanol listeners, right? So for me, realistically, Victor Martinez should be bumped down in the order. And when JD Martinez comes back, he should be the cleanup hitter. He should have been last year down the stretch too. When his production started tailing off a bit, JD Martinez should have been inserted into that cleanup spot in the lineup. And you keep Cabrera as the 3-hitter, JD as the 4-hitter, and Castellanos, who's been hitting second, he could be the 5th hitter, Upton can be the 5th hitter, and Vimar at this point, I think, best case scenario, he should be the number 6 hitter in the Tigers order. He has proven that he can't consistently get it done as a cleanup hitter. His best days are behind him, and for sure at hitting for power. So for me, put him as that number 6 hitter. I agree with Tony Paul and all those people out there that are naysayers about him and his productivity, and harping on the fact that he's not hitting enough for extra base power to warrant that cleanup spot in the Tigers lineup.
Okay, have I revealed enough warts for the week, or is there anything else that you would consider a wart for the Detroit Tigers? Because I know you're picking at them. I know you're somehow fascinated with all the negatives with the Detroit Tigers. We brought up Victor Martinez. We brought up Jimenez. We brought up Anibal Sanchez as well. Anything else that's been of concern to you?
Not right now, Doc. I'll leave it at that for the Tigers.
No more warts, huh? Okay, good.
No more warts.
All right, how do you see the series progressing versus the Tampa Bay Rays? Do you think they have a chance to sweep the series?
Well, they're playing the Rays for 3 in Tampa and then in Minnesota for 3 over the weekend. And I've got to believe they have a shot to take both series right now. But remember, the Twins can hit. That's my concern for the Tigers. And because their pen is still not, consistently reliable, they might give up a few leads there to the Twins in late inning situations, which allows the Twins to take that series. So I don't see a sweep against either team, but especially against the Twinkies over the weekend.
All right, who's your buster of the week?
My buster of the week right now has to be Justin Verlander. I'm sorry, JV, 4 innings pitched, and his line was stinky. Okay, he had 4 innings he pitched on Saturday against the Tribe, and at Progressive Field, where he has not gotten it done numerous times now throughout his big league career. And specifically, 11 hits allowed and 9 earned runs. Doc, to sum it up, they didn't cut the mustard seed whatsoever and didn't give the Tigers a chance to win that ball game on Saturday. And when you're not giving your ball club a chance to win, well, guess what? You are very worthy of the Buster of the Week on this very podcast.
Buster, no doubt about it. My toast of the town goes to Alex Avila because he has shut up all his critics. He has done a good job, a good enough job of handling this starting rotation. And it's a team right now that looks to be a team. And when you have a team, you have glue guys. Now, can Alex Avila be on the same page as a David Ross a la the Cubs? Hell no. But it's an interesting story in that you brought a guy back, a journeyman, in Alex Avila, but there's obviously family ties. He knows this starting rotation. He knows the young cats. So is Alex Avila David Ross? No. But hey, take what you can get. And when you can have performances where you hit for power and when you can do well also with the starters, hey, you earn an opportunity to win. Toast of the town.
And Doc, things that we learned on this week's episode, you like K-Rod more than I do. I see him blowing more than 5 saves the rest of the season, and I like Alex Avila. I think a lot more than you do. And maybe that liking of Avila will go down progressively as the year goes along.
And many people are saying, to close this out, that Jimenez probably will come back, that to waste him in Toledo, despite, keeping him an extra year of club control, would be a waste of time, especially if you potentially miss the playoffs by a couple games. The Tigers will really kick themselves in the butt if they keep Jimenez in the minors, knowing that he can do some things with that bullpen, especially with whatever the hell Anibal Sanchez has been trying to do. So if Jimenez stays down for longer than 2 or 3 weeks, then we can definitely get angry and figure out what the hell's going on with these Detroit Tigers.
Doc, with that, I think we said it all, as Howard Stern will say after recording and finishing up an interview. Thank you very much, and thanks to all of our listeners, as usual, for tuning in to episode number 87 of the pod. We'll be back next week for another fine episode. Talk to you guys then. Goodbye.